This is Conversation Crossroads. This is your host, Andrew, and today we're going to talk about Kamala Harris, a recent tweet she came out. I kind of want to go over some of the details of it. Let's just get into it. Let's dive deep. I try to be as non-biased as possible. If you've heard this channel before, I'm an engineer. I try to be logical thinker, give you guys the information, give you my opinion. You guys can take it from there. So, that being said, Kamala Harris came out with this tweet, and it says... And you hear a lot about the Democrats right now. They say Trump's America, Trump's America, Trump's America. They try to blame all the problems going on, the rioting, unemployment, COVID, etc., etc. They try to blame it all on Donald Trump. And we're going to kind of debunk a little bit of that. Obviously, if someone that was in Trump's position, you could always be better. You could always criticize. You can always perform better in retrospect because you don't know the problems. You don't know the best way to solve problems as they come up. So now we're going to look at Kamala Harris. She says nearly 183,000 Americans have died from coronavirus, more than 16 million out of work. Students across the country can't go back to campus. More than 110,000 small businesses closed for good. This is Trump's America. Wow, it's quite the statement there, Kamala. So let's go through one by one. Let's kind of identify each one. Let's say, is it Trump's fault? Is part of it Trump's fault or none of it Trump's fault? Let's dive into it. So nearly 183,000 Americans have died from COVID. Is this Trump's fault? Okay, I think this is a resounding no. You could make the argument he could have handled COVID better, and I think that's a fair argument. And I would also say back that the Democrats, back in March when Trump closed, travel from China, where obviously the virus propagated from, they were calling him xenophobic. They thought they were advocating to stay out, keep doing normal things. Back when he was actually starting to close things down, he was reacting faster than almost all the Democrats were at the time. So saying that they would do a better job, I think, is a far stretch. Saying he could have done a better job, that's a fair statement. I think anyone could have done a better job in retrospect. Blaming 183,000 deaths on him is unfair. I think that's just logic dancing to the point of large statement against your political opponent. CDC information did come out too, and we know 6% of that 183,000, 6% of people died from only COVID, meaning that was the sole reason they died on their death certificate. Out of the 94 other percent, they had 1, 2, or even 3 comorbidities on their death certificate, meaning they had pneumonia, they had some other type of disease, they had a chronic illness, etc. They had something that compromised their body that also allowed them to die. That's not downplaying the fact that COVID helped with the death of many people. COVID definitely accelerated the death of many people, but so does the flu, so does other things. So I think the first statement, we can kind of debunk that. It's not Trump's fault. Could he have done better? Yes. But we also know the statistics aren't as severe as we once thought. COVID just isn't as much of a threat as we initially thought it was going to be. So now, more than 16 million people out of work. Okay, well, we had record unemployment before COVID hit. And COVID hit, put everyone in a frenzy, pandemic, how bad is this going to be? So yeah, a lot of jobs got cut because businesses weren't open. So blaming that like trying to act like it's Trump's economic plan that caused this 16 million out of work is false. Every month for the past month or two, we've had record employment statistics, people becoming employed, getting off of unemployment. So this one's untrue. Unless you're completely blind from data, this one's just not true either. You can't put that on Trump. This was a pandemic situation. Even if you had the perfect Democrat do the perfect prep for COVID-19, there still would have been millions of jobs lost because they would have shut down harder. So saying that this is Trump's fault, if anything, there's less jobs lost under Trump because, say, he was less cautious in your point of view. That would probably be the most likely statement. There's less jobs lost from Trump because he was, dangerous. He was being reckless, which I don't think that's true either. But so let's go on. Students across the country can't go back to work or can't go back to campus. which means their parents have a hard time going back to work if they got all their little kids running around at home. I'm confused by this one because this is one of Trump's biggest statements that he makes over and over again. He keeps saying, get the kids back into school, get the kids back into school, get the kids back into school. They have the lowest probability of death of anyone from getting COVID, and we already know the statistics for that are already low. So trying to shove this one in there is kind of like, I question it because he's kind of the one out of everyone. The Democrats don't want kids to go back to school, and Trump does because he knows the plight it has on parents being out of work because they have to take care of their kids at home. So I really think she should have just left this one out because it's hard even to make an argument for this one. And now we get more than 110,000 small businesses closed for good. I want to give you a story for this one. So I have a personal acquaintance, friend. We played sports together growing up. We went to high school together. We played sports in high school together. He's a good guy, a great guy. He's a Black American. Let's just get to the point. He started a small business. He started a restaurant in my local downtown city. And from what I know, when he started it was earlier this year, it was going pretty well. It was pretty successful. I think it had some good food. I hadn't made it there in time before COVID hit. But then COVID hit, shut him down. Okay, I think he was going to survive through that. But now get this. These riots started. We had some riots in our local, some riot and looting in our local city, and they destroyed his restaurant. Black Lives Matter protests/riots destroyed a young black man's restaurant business venture that he just started, and it's closed indefinitely now. That's one of the many 110,000 small businesses that closed for good. And what was the cause of that? Well, A, COVID had a little bit of a part, but B, it was destroyed. It was destroyed from Black Lives Matter protests and riots. I'm all for getting some police reform in here to try and help with situations and everything, and have police be more accountable, have people who deal with police be more accountable. But it was I don't know. I mean, it was for that cause that you destroyed a black man's future. I personally think he'll rebuild. So, I think he's a strong kid. He's gonna get back on his feet pretty quick here, but it's a tragedy. I mean, that's just one of the many instances. And I'm not going to try and throw an example out there saying that's the end all be all. Many different circumstances you could, throw an instance out there. So, take what I said with a grain of salt for, totality's sake. But looking at this, this is Trump's America. Look, we're trying to get through all the BS, all the spin, blaming this on the president. Each one of these points is not directly the responsibility of the president. She's trying to spin it to make it seem like it is. And you can make the argument that the Democrats have done more pain than Trump has in this whole crisis situation. The states that have the tightest lockdowns and have lost the most jobs, are Democratic-run states. And, let that be what it is, and you can take that for what it's worth. But this is the kind of logic you see from both sides, but I would say predominantly from the left, from the Democrats. You see this kind of logic where they say large statement, Trump bad, or large statement, Republicans bad, but they don't use the proper building blocks to make that logical leap. It's like flat earthers. Flat earthers will say, the earth looks flat, it seems flat, it's flat. It's like, well, you didn't set the base for your logic, it's like physics, going through physical equations, proving those physics equations are accurate to then slowly incrementally get up to make the assessment. The earth is round. You just kind of take that leap based off of a few, big headlines, a few big numbers, and you just make that leap all the way to the top saying, this is Trump's America. Because he's president, he's responsible for everyone, for everything. And we know that's not true. We live in a democratic society with 3 branches of government governing the people. So, I mean, it's obviously a political ploy to, try and help their cause. And I think most people see through it. A lot of people don't, though. Let's just see some of the comments. I want to see some of the top comments here. So the first comment, 230 likes. Everyone knows that number isn't true anymore, Kamala. Most deaths can be attributed to elderly folks, people with prior illnesses, and vulnerable. Sadly, a vast majority of people would have passed regardless of COVID. That unsilent majority is his name. That's likely true. I think, of talking specifics, I think saying that most people would have passed regardless, it's all time. Yeah, everyone's going to pass regardless, but someone with, say, pneumonia, we know treatment for pneumonia. We know how to get elderly, the best chance of recovery from pneumonia, and then they get pneumonia with COVID, and there's no coming back from that. So, I mean, it's, he's mostly true, though. He's mostly true that, Kamala, we know these numbers aren't true. Let's look at the second one. COVID has taken this year, just since outbreak, has taken more than 100 years. Oh, this is Joe Biden's quote. This is the gaffe that we've seen. He's just quoting Joe Biden. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We could go through comments, but a lot of people don't know what they're talking about, so it's not worth necessarily going too deep into it. But I just wanted to show you, just taking a simple quote, simple numbers, and then taking that logic leap saying it's Trump America. We shouldn't do that. We should never do that. We should never attribute big stats and then try and put blame on one person for it. That's not very good logical thinking. You have to look at the underlying layers of why it happened in the first place. How could have it been differently? And at that point, you can assess whether someone was competent enough in their position to prevent it in the first place. In this instance, I think Trump did the best he did with the knowledge he had, and I think someone could have done a little better realistically, but I don't see, you're either going to make the death count lower or you're going to ruin more people's lives because of being out of work, destroy more small businesses, which destroys people's livelihoods. So it's a win. It's literally a lose-lose for whoever was in office at the time, statistically speaking. But let me know what you think in the comments. I'll respond. We can start that debate, see what you guys think. Leave a like if you like the video, and subscribe if you want to see more content similar to this. Yeah, I'll see you again.